if anybody's still there watching. Oh man. Well, so what is this today? What is it? It's called Shift the Journey. What I wanted to do was follow something that I'm passionate about, or follow through with something that I'm passionate about, and that's connecting with people and hearing their stories and then sharing their stories with other people. And I figured out, hey, why not do it on LinkedIn? Let's do it. And YouTube. I also have it on YouTube. So
Cool.
anyway, um, that's a little bit about the show, a little bit about me. My name is Tito Mogus. I am retired Air Force. I served 20 years and 29 days in the U.S. Air Force. I joined like 3 months shy of my 21st birthday, and went. I thought, yeah, I'm going to travel the world. No, I not for the first half of it, I guess. I did some air launch cruise missile maintenance, and that put me in what I felt like was the coldest place I'd ever been in my life. And now it has not. It was not. It's not the coldest place, but at the time when I was 21, yeah, Spokane, Washington was really cold to me, and I thought like 40-degree weather was cold. And then I worked outside, and then I felt like negative degrees and all that stuff. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can deal with this. And then I was like, no. And I changed jobs, and I I went to go work on airplanes. And then for the next 17 years, I was stationed in Mississippi and in Georgia. Retired in 2015. My last job in the Air Force was a really low tech data reporting job. And I said, man, I bet there's something like this on the outside. And so found something after like 6 months of searching. Somebody gave me a shot. Shout out Justin Spears, and Jennifer Holt. Anyway, somebody gave me a shot, and I started my first job in December of 2015. It was funny. Michael and I were just talking about how how I just moved to Nashville at that time, and then I was off for like a week because we had 8 inches of snow. But anyway, um, yeah. So yeah, this show is all about like just hearing people's about people's journeys, and like really just diving into um what steps people took to go from a certain career field to another career field, or some kind of function in a field to another function in a field. And so after all that, that was the intro. Man, I talk a lot, I know. But let's talk to our first guest. Today's guest is Michael Norman. Woohoo! Everybody give him a shout. Yay! Hand claps, jazz hands, whatever you want to do. Michael Norman is we're going to talk about how we met, but why don't we go over the three things I'm going to ask you tonight? Three
Sure.
basic
Yeah.
things, right? The three basic things are, where did you start? Well, okay, so the first the first question is actually two questions, but I'm going to pretend it's one question. It's where did you start and what are you doing now? The second one is, what are you involved in that is unique or interesting? And then the third one is, what are you passionate about? And it doesn't have to do with, what you do for a job. So
Sure.
let's get to question one. Tell us about your journey. Where did you start and where are you now? How'd you get there?
Well, similar to you, I was in the army. As After high school, I joined. I well, I started. I grew up in New York, upstate New York. Went to high school in South Carolina. When I
Oh,
graduated in 2004, I didn't really have a whole lot going on. Fumbled around for a few years, and eventually I joined the army in 2007, and I got stationed in Fort Drum, New York. I was in the infantry,
oh.
and I just did 4 years. But in that 4 years, I got to see the world. I got to see a lot of them. I got
I
to
got
see
to see the
a
I
lot of
got to see a lot
families.
of the Middle East, like toward the end, like in the middle
Yeah,
somewhere. But go ahead.
within 3 months of leaving basic training, I was in Kuwait, and then I ended up in Iraq for 15 months. Uh, I did with the 10th Mountain Division. I was came back, was only home for another 9 months, and then, well, I guess about a year, and then I was deployed again second time. I went to Afghanistan.
Real
So
quick, real quick.
yeah.
What is the hottest place you've ever been in your life?
Um, so Kuwait during the summertime is pretty terrible. Um, Excess of 120 degrees
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
That's like the real, not
So
like
would you
the
say
real
that?
feel, but the actual,
Yeah.
actual temperature. Yeah.
So would you say that's the worst ever?
As far as
Hottest?
how hot it got, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that we didn't ever spend too much time in Kuwait, but especially during on our first deployment, we on the way to Iraq, we spent a month in Kuwait and did like
Mhm.
acclimation. So we were
Mm.
living in tents, sleeping on cots, and
Nice.
our job was just to get used to being hot and getting used to the climate. And yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny because, like, I know we're gonna get back to, like, you were talking about Afghanistan, but when you said Kuwait, I was like, man, I have a friend who grew up in New Orleans. It's like an hour and a half from here, and she was deployed to the southern Philippines, and she said that's the hottest place she'd ever been before. And I was like, man, I've been to the Philippines. It's hot, but it's not that hot. The hottest place
I would
I've ever
imagine it's a
been.
very different experience. Hot though, like
Yeah,
in Kuwait,
well,
it's so super dry, and it's like
right.
there's like so little shade. It's all the shade is manufactured from the buildings
Yes.
or tents or anything like that.
Yes. So I was deployed 5 times to Qatar, and it was hot there, but one time we stopped in Kuwait at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I'm gonna die. As soon as I walked off the airplane, I'm like, this is the hottest I've
Yeah,
ever been at 3 o'clock in the morning. All right, so Kuwait, that is the
yeah,
hottest place. So
yeah.
okay, go ahead, keep going.
No, it's
Afghanistan.
all good. It's all good. So yeah, I went to Afghanistan, which was not the hottest place. And then I did a full year there. In 2011, April 2011, I got out of the army. I just did 4 years, and I came to Nashville then to go to college. I used my GI Bill. I got my undergrad in business administration, like every good young man coming out of the military. And then,
Must not be a good young man.
well, I felt like a young man, but I was 25, and all my peers were 18,
Oh yeah.
and everyone thought I was faculty, and actually instead of actually a student.
Dude, my
I
first
would
day of work, I
I
was
would sit
41.
I would sit down at a table in like just like a common area, a bunch of other students and people next to someone I did know with other people I didn't know, and suddenly everyone would get super proper and be really well behaved, and because they thought that I was someone who could get them in trouble, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm a student just like you." Um, but anyway, so I did that. I graduated, on time in 2015 is when I graduated. While I was going to school, I was a barista for 5 years. I stayed on for another
Saw
year
that.
after I got out of college.
You're a
So I
Starbucks,
spent
huh?
yes, I worked at Starbucks for 5 years,
Wow.
at various stores in the Franklin Murfreesboro area,
Okay.
and I
Ooh,
enjoyed it
I
for
bet
a
you
lot of
served
reasons,
me
but
coffee.
probably I worked at the Cool Springs off of Carruthers Parkway. That was the
Oh,
one I worked
yeah.
at the most, and
Okay.
but also I worked at the old Ford Starbucks in Murfreesboro for a year too. So,
Okay.
but yeah. So after I left Starbucks, I ended up finding a job at the state of Tennessee. I worked for the Department of Commerce Regulatory Boards Division, and while I was there, yeah,
What made you wanna go from barista to that? Like,
I wasn't
what caught your eye about,
okay.
like, regulatory.
So the barista thing was very planned. It was actually something I thought of while I was getting ready to finish my combat and like military career. I thought, man, I had a really serious job, really serious job, and I need to like come down from that high. And so I thought making coffee for people seemed like the opposite of that. And I thought if I fail at this, no one's going to care. No one's going to care that I didn't make it at a Starbucks making coffee. So and it was flexible hours while I went to school, and I got health insurance for me and my a partner, a spouse, for part-time work.
Yeah.
So it just made sense, but it was a strategic decision to work at Starbucks, not a career decision to work at Starbucks. And so me
Yeah.
leaving to go to the state was very much a return to what I wanted to do with my life, which was serve. I wasn't really interested in um, just helping people make money. I wanted to
Yeah.
um, do something with my career that was more giving back. So for the same reasons I joined the military, I decided to go work for the government. And while I was working for this regulatory body, which is just the job that I applied to, that I happened to get an interview for, that I got accepted in. I didn't really
Yeah.
know much about what I was getting into. I just knew I wanted to get into that area. And shortly after is when I started my master's in public administration at Tennessee State University. So while I was working there, I was also going to get my master's, and I concentrated in nonprofit management. I was really trying to focus in on that. And then right as that was from 2016 to 2018, and
Mhm.
right before I finished my master's, I ended up taking a referral from a friend to go try and be a recruiter in healthcare.
I saw that.
So you'll notice a trend on my resume
It's
that
like
there is no trend for 15 or like 10 to 15 years, from like 2007 to uh 2022 basically.
yeah.
There's just no single thread, and
Yeah.
and
It's
that's
crazy
part of my
because
testament. Yeah.
yeah, it's so crazy because like when I think sometimes people like come up with these shows or whatever and they're like, okay, for the first one we're gonna have this person for this person purpose purpose. I can't even speak. Person's purpose, right? For this purpose or this and that. And like I seriously just went to everybody who said that they would take part in the show. I was like, hey, there's a
Yeah.
sign up. Go to the sign up and find a day and time that works for you, right? And then you signed up, and I was like, "Hey, you're gonna be on the launch," and you're like, "Well, I just signed up for something that works with my calendar." But I mean, I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I'm like, dude, I feel like you've done everything under the sun, and like
Yeah.
there is no like, oh yeah, the path to take is to start in the army, then
Yeah.
work at Starbucks, and then like all these different things. It's just that was just your journey.
Well, it's one of the things that I do enjoy talking about, especially because what you're trying to do is something that I think is really important, is sharing stories and inspiring other people to take chances that they're too afraid to take or don't think are possible.
Yeah.
And I, if there's one of the bullet points in my story, is that sometimes you have to start over. And
Yeah.
and I part of my story is I get to a point that I'm fired from a job again, and man, it sucks, and I can't find another job. And I remember telling Lisa, my fiance now at the time girlfriend, I was like, I'm gonna be so pissed if I have to start over again, square
Mm.
one. Like I was so mad that whatever the journey I had gone on, the different roads I had taken weren't working. And it didn't make sense because, like, on paper I was a good employee. I was productive. I did all the things I was asked to do. um, and of all the random things that I've ever received, I was when I was as a recruiter, when I was working for this company, Compasses, I don't mind saying it. um, I got a I got a fortune cookie for lunch on a random day. And this is one of my favorite anecdotes.
Oh, you
I
still
pulled
have
out
it?
my wallet. I
Nice.
have carried this fortune in my wallet since 2019, and the quote has stuck with me ever since, and it really started changing things for me. The most exhausting thing in life is being insincere. I've never had a fortune quite knock me on my feet like that.
Wow.
And what I realized was the reason why I couldn't hang with the stuff that I was trying, the reason why And don't get me wrong, it took me years after that to really grapple with the implications of it. But the reason why I was having such a hard time again and again is I wasn't doing the things I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was doing the things I felt like I had to do, maybe because it made
Oh
more
man,
money, or because a
dude.
partner
Yes.
I was with thought it was a good idea. I doubted myself again and again. I
Yeah.
actually, before I took my next job after that one in 2019, I started taking coding classes. I did like a free coding thing online. I was like, this is interesting.
Oh yeah. What
think
did
I
you
could I
use?
think I could do this. I think it was Code Academy at first. I think
Oh
Code
yeah.
Academy was the first
Yeah.
thing I tried doing. I had no idea yet what kind of coding I'd want to do, but
Hmm.
I had started trying it, and my TMI, my ex-wife was just like, no, that's stupid. You shouldn't do that.
Oh.
You can't do that.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, you're probably right. This seems like something that would be too hard for me, and I let that go. I just kind of
Yeah.
let it go, and I ended up finding a good job. I ended up after having about 9 months, 8 months of unemployment that year. Well, I guess
Hmm.
it was more like 6 months of unemployment that year. Um, I learned that I guess I'm kind of skipping around my story here.
That's all right,
Um,
man.
no, it's okay. That I was let go from that job after only like 9 months, and it didn't make sense. I couldn't figure out why, despite being productive, and um, that and trying so hard to make it work that it didn't.
Mhm.
And then I got that fortune cookie that I just read, and it was my first big like career blow. Just like, man, I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and it didn't work out.
Mhm.
And then I spent the next 6 months trying to find whatever, and then I ended up um, back at my alma mater at Trevecca Nazarene University as an enrollment counselor. And I started doing,
Mhm.
because I had done some recruiting experience. So instead of recruiting for, a clinic nurses, I was an RN recruiter and clinicians and stuff like that. I transitioned to recruiting students for master's programs like MBAs
Mm.
and whatnot, and which made way more sense to me. I was not that RNs don't make sense to me, but it was something that I actually wanted to do. I actually believed in education. I actually believed in what I was doing. It's something that I wanted to do, and it clicked for me. And
Yeah.
within a few months of being a successful enrollment counselor, the university says, "Hey, you're a veteran. You like doing veteran stuff. Do you want to do our veteran stuff? Because we don't have anyone doing veteran stuff."
Mm.
So pretty quickly, it transitioned to being their enrollment counselor to being a veteran services coordinator, and
Trailblazer, huh?
the de facto director for the school, because they didn't have anyone else doing it. And so I spent 2 years, almost 2 years, trying to establish a program both for bringing new veterans to the school, but also mentoring the students that were there, and keeping them in school so they can graduate. And this is the first time that I'm really getting exposure to the data. I learned how firsthand how to do stuff in Excel. I had to figure out where the veterans were, who they are, the military affiliated students as well, their spouses and children that were using GI Bill, and then figure out where they were, their GPAs, how we were getting them, where we were most popular, and none of that data was being
Wow.
tracked. I had to create ways to track them in our LMS so that we could actually query them. I didn't even know the language at the time, but I was
Wow.
starting to do stuff, and it was just a lot of googling, you know. And but that's 2019 to 2021. I don't know if anything really big happened between 2019 and 2021, but I'm just kidding. Yeah. So COVID happened in 2020, right in the middle of all that.
I was
COVID
like,
happened.
wait, something happened. I know something happened. What was
Yeah.
it again?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So so a higher education institution was certainly impacted by that, and we held on as long as we could. But eventually, my department succumbed to budget cuts, and
Yeah.
which led to my like um, another frustration of like, wow, I was actually kind of getting good at this. Um, and then I managed to pretty quickly transition to a small nonprofit in the area that did some educational stuff there, and I was able to do more work in data, kind of in a similar program data sort of.
Mhm.
mentality, looking at student applications. I actually did a big DEI project for them that
Mhm.
I got through self-taught measures, finally got into stuff like pivot tables and doing dynamic
Uh,
content and visualizations. And
so
I can remember, go ahead.
so when you were you like at that time when you were like looking for that job, were
Yeah.
you thinking, "Oh, I want something where I'd be like handling data, where I'd be
No,
doing some
I
reporting?"
had I had realized when I was working for the school, for the university, that I enjoyed it. You know, I thought it was fun, but it didn't still seem like something that was plausible for me. It wasn't on my
Hmm.
radar. But by the time I moved into this other nonprofit, and I was only there for like 4 or 5 months, because it's the next stage of my failure story. Um, I dove even deeper into it, and I can remember the first time I had been given a CSV from our contracted tech person. They were sending me these large CSV files, and I didn't understand the implications of that in an Excel workbook. And I kept creating pivot tables and
Ugh,
visualizations, and then I
it's
would
like it
just hit
hurts me in
save,
my soul right now. No,
and I
I
would just
mean,
hit
just
save,
because
and then
I'm
I
like,
open it back up again.
oh,
It's all gone. I'm like, what happened to my
yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
And I did that. I did that like 5 or 6 times in a couple of days, just so frustrated.
Oh
I
no.
didn't understand, and finally looked it up, and I realized. But what I got out of that experience, I had fun every time. Even when I lost it all and I had to do it all over again,
Yeah,
I was really enjoying it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and at that job, um, it's my second major career blow. I got fired,
Mm,
and I didn't get fired for not being productive. I got fired for not, not meshing with my manager well.
yeah.
And I'm not a mean guy. I'm a nice guy. I just couldn't understand. I was so confused, and I learned a couple lessons there. The first lesson I learned there, coupled with my time at Tribeca, was the big one. Moving the data is that I enjoyed the data aspect of my last two jobs more than I actually enjoyed the job itself.
Oh,
So I started, and this it was after this. It was January 2022. I started the new year with an unexpected letting go, and that was when I had that conversation with Lisa. Just like, I'm going to be so pissed that I have to start again. But the other thing I learned from that job, and this is a really important one, and I'll tell anyone who asks for career advice this, whether they elicit it, the need or not. The company you work for, or getting the dream job, is not as important as the manager you work for and the team that you join.
yeah.
A good team or a bad team can make a mediocre company a blessing to work for, or a great company a pain to work for. And the job that I had just gotten fired for, that was supposed to be my dream job. It was a nonprofit, it was in
Mhm.
education. I was doing important stuff for people who were trying to better themselves.
Right.
But because I ended up with a just in a team situation that just wasn't working, personalities just weren't working.
Yeah.
It was a failure.
Yeah.
And
People often ask like stuff like that, like how do what's your dream job, this and that. And I always tell them, I was like, man, I don't have a dream job. Like I have things that I want to do. There are things that I've done
yeah,
before, and things that I would like to do again. There's things that I've never done that I would like to do. But with everything, it's all about relationships, like relationships
yeah,
and trust. And people who are have a hard time with that will have a hard time anywhere they work, right? I've worked with people who were like, and they've acknowledged it themselves. They're like, I really don't have social skills, and I was really sheltered, and I don't know how to communicate with people, and can you help me because you talk a lot? I'm like, okay, but it's like, so
yeah,
it's really all about relationships, and then like doing business with anybody, whether it's like internal, external, you have clients or you're selling, whatever it is, it really is about
yeah,
relationships, man. Trust and communication. If you don't have those things,
yeah,
you're gonna have a really hard time.
absolutely. Earlier I mentioned the whole idea of being being insincere is the most exhausting thing you can do.
Yeah.
Um, but second to that, something I've learned just personally outside of being a data engineer is that there's a second piece to that, which is being comfortable with who you are, being comfortable with yourself. If you
Yep.
really want to connect with people, if you really wanted to feel comfortable or vibe or whatever, as the youths are saying these days, you really need to start with the inner work. Um, Nothing made sense in my life until I became comfortable with who I was. Everything was misaligned. I uh, failed friendships, failed relationships because I was trying so hard to be what I thought I needed to be because I
Yeah.
didn't think what I was enough.
Oh
And
yeah.
I didn't think what I was enough because I wasn't comfortable with my strengths. I was really comfortable with my weaknesses. And I was very aware of them. But I was not comfortable with my strengths and I undermined my own value at every turn. And
Oh yeah.
maybe you can fumble through life if you don't figure that out, and maybe some of us get successful without figuring that out. But if you keep failing at those relationships, if you keep failing at jobs, even though you're doing your work well, um, I don't want to victim blame. I but maybe think about who you are.
Mhm.
Think about what it is that's I at some point I realized that I was the constant in my life, and
Yeah.
there are some things I can't change, but there are some things I can change. So I don't want to go to totally on the soapbox here, but that's the other piece of advice I'll give to anyone who's willing to hear is nothing is going to make sense in life until you become comfortable with who you are.
Oh yeah.
You got to do the work.
Yeah,
Um,
in the Nashville software school, like data analytics roundtable, right, where we met.
mhm.
We're gonna get to that like fully, but
Yeah,
just everybody who's out there watching or whatever. So like Nashville Software School, they they have invited me to data analytics roundtable like every quarter for
mhm.
since like 2020. I don't know. It's been awesome. It's been a great experience. Just like meeting people and seeing people, where they are in like shifting their journey, right? And one of the things that people often ask is like, hey, if there's any piece of advice that you can give me before we sign off, what is it? And I'm like, believe in yourself, because I had a hard time
Yeah,
like in my first gig where like I really did not believe in myself. I didn't believe that I could succeed, didn't believe that I was like good at certain things. And so I just kind of gave up. I left that job and I was just had no job for like 2 months. It's like, yeah, you look on my
yeah.
LinkedIn and you have a career gap, oh, career gap. Nowadays,
Oh
it's like,
no.
it happens. There's layoffs and there was COVID and there's all that stuff. But that time, I pretty much went on like a work sabbatical, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I don't know if I'm good enough to be a data analyst or a BI developer. I don't know if I'm good enough to
Yeah,
work in the corporate field. I mean, in the corporate world after being in the military for 20 years. I don't know if I could do that. And I had an interview with somebody who usually when you have an interview, they're asking you questions, all this. From the moment I walked in the room, shout out Mark, he was like selling me the job. He's like, hey, oh yeah, we've been looking for somebody with Ultrix and Tableau experience, and it was like, okay. And he gave me a shot there, and I was there for like 3.5 years. But so yeah, go ahead, man, keep going.
that's okay. No, bringing up NSS is actually a good timing. I think that's really the next part of my journey, and where you and I met through the roundtable that you
Yeah,
participated in.
yeah,
And if you hadn't mentioned that you were in the Air Force, I probably wouldn't have reached out to you. But because you mentioned that, I was like,
yeah,
well, he's a veteran. I have to reach out and say, hey, because I'm a veteran. And but anyway, I started 2022, failing out of that local nonprofit, and I spent months applying to whatever I could. I was really
yeah,
my net was cast very very widely. And one of the things that I learned that's fascinated me was when I started applying to jobs after NSS, and I narrowed my search parameter down to just data analyst or data engineer or BI developer. It was amazing to me how much easier it was to find the jobs I was looking for when I knew what I was looking for. And I didn't
Right.
understand when I was working for anything that is marketing or anything that is communications or anything that is, you know, community outreach. And it's like, man, why can't I find the jobs I'm looking for? I didn't know what I was looking for. That's why I couldn't
Yeah.
find what I was looking for. But anyway, I ended up during that bout of unemployment, I ended up having dinner with a friend, another couple, and she had transitioned from being an elementary school teacher to being a web developer, and she had done that
Woo!
in 2020.
Yeah.
When after the schools shut down, she took the opportunity of, well, I'm going to go to National Software School and become a web developer,
Yeah.
and she was a couple years out of that at that point, and was doing really well. And when we talked for a while, I was really encouraged by her story. And this would have been beginning of April 2022. My partner and I went home, talked about it, um, did a lot of research in a very short period of time, and we realized that this seemed like a smart decision.
Yeah.
After a lot of research and trying to figure out different types of financial programs, we I ended up submitting an application to National Software School for their data analytics cohort, and within a week I had an interview, and within 2 weeks I had been accepted for the cohort that started in May. So it was just really well timed. If I
Yeah.
hadn't had that conversation a few months before, I might have gotten cold feet on waiting that long. But
Yeah.
so in May 2022, I started at National Software School, and because I'm privileged enough, I was able to, um, I should say I'm privileged enough to have compensation from having been wounded in Iraq, not because I have rich family. I was able to afford paying my bills while I just did full time at National Software School and really focus on that. And my partner worked to help keep groceries in the fridge. And so for 3 months, a little over 3 months, I focused Monday through Friday, just 9 to 4, just working on learning the code. And that time was really really impactful to me. Obviously, they taught me how to code. They taught me how to do the basics of data analysis, and I got to meet
Yeah.
people like you and network in the community in the industry. But the real lessons I learned at NSS, what really encouraged me that, and this is important. Learning to code is obtainable, and it's not only something certain people can do.
Yep.
It's not easy, but it can be learned at any point in your career.
Yep.
The second thing that I learned and assess is that you have to move past the need to be immediately good at something in order to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Which is something that I really struggled with in my life. I at one point in my history, I'm technically I'm a musician, even I don't really do that anymore. I used to play the guitar and sing and write songs. I was really into that, but I was into that because at a young age I was naturally good at it, and I had a lot of friends. But then, like at some point, the natural talent wasn't enough, and I just didn't
Right.
have it in me to really try, because every time I would really try, it wasn't good, and I would throw my hands in the air and stop trying. So moving fast forward, it took NSS that time. I'm going to plug them relentlessly because I will always be grateful for their impact in my life. But they taught me to learn something, um, you know, and I learned that when you have to approach each class each day, each day after the class, with an attitude that I don't know this now, but I will know it better than I did yesterday, and allowing the aggregate of the time spent be the measure of what to expect from yourself instead of what I saw from seasoned veterans in the industry. So
Mm.
it's so tempting to compare yourselves to, like, my manager's on the call right now and he's been doing this for more than 5 years. It's really tempting for myself to, like, wow, I suck at this because I'm not as good at it
Right.
as he is.
Yeah.
But you have to make yourself the benchmark, and
Yeah.
maybe you have mentors that you want to aspire to, and you have people who can teach you and mentor you and coach you, But if you're looking at being as good as they are as your success, you're doomed for failure unless you're just a prodigy in this. Most of us aren't. You have to learn
Yeah.
to allow your time in it to be the expectation of your talent, not. And the second piece, the last third, I guess, the last thing that I learn and assess is that you will you will always have more time to learn. You will be looking up stuff every day. Um, every day you will be Googling, how do I do my job?
That's the life
And
of the
sometimes,
developer.
yeah, and sometimes even every hour when you're coding. Like it's not like it's going to happen once in a while. Well, I'll forget how to do this really complex thing. It's like, no, I forgot how to do this really simple thing because I don't do it every day. And I
Right.
decided
Yeah.
a long time ago I didn't have to memorize this because there's a whole world of internet that
Yes.
has stored this information for me.
Yep. That's
And
right.
so, like the token there, I'm going to leave you all with on that is you got to stop relying on perfection and rote memorization as the KPI for your skill set. Like
Mm.
that, maybe you've memorized it all to the point you don't have to look up stuff. And there's certainly things I don't need to look up anymore.
Oh yeah.
But I don't let I don't let what I've memorized gauge how well I do at my job. Unless you're doing a test in school that is not open books, and there's not a whole lot of that at NSS. Um, the your Google and the world of information is at your fingertips, and that should relieve some of the burden on you. That should make you feel a little better about what you need to know, because what you the true challenge, I think, the true skill set in coding, and this, so like a lot of jobs, is problem solving.
Yeah.
And if you can solve problems, if you can follow rules and then realize how to manipulate things into that rule set, then you can leverage that skill set far better. um, and coding is just another tool. I mean, that advice, I think, goes for just about anything. But
Yeah.
um, then this it, especially when it comes to stuff like coding. I work in data. If I write a code that doesn't work, I'm not hurting anything. If I hit enter and it says failure, no one's like, hey, Michael, why do you suck at this? It's like, oh, it's an error. Like, let
Yeah.
me figure out what that is. And
Yeah.
um, as long
And
as you
you're
get your work done.
yeah, and you're in like automations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The way that I've gotten better, like the thing that I do is not as like heavily with coding. I rely a lot on Alteryx, right? And I've
Yeah.
been using Alteryx for 8 years, right? 8+ years. And the thing with Alteryx is that like if I look at my old workflows, I go, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Why did I do that?" It's because nobody was really looking at them. But like
Hmm.
the places, like the years where I got better and better, what I was doing is because I was having somebody peer review my work. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
can you look at this and tell me, like, what's a way that you would, do this logical concept, right? What's the way that you would get this number from these data sources? And like we talk about those things, it's like, oh yeah, that's a better way actually. Or they'd say, oh yeah, you did great
Yeah.
there, whatever. And if you like constantly feel like you're working in a vacuum, you're not really ever going to get better, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, you
It
just think
that
about
kind of goes
anybody
back to
who's
my talk about
good at
having
anything,
a good
right?
team. Yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of gets back to having a good team. And there's some talk coming out of NSS when you're looking for your first job, and the question almost always comes up: is it better to be work at a large company as part of a team, or to get on a small
Yeah.
company where you have to do everything and you might learn more? And there's no right answer,
No.
but if you're newer and if you can get in a good team, there's a lot more opportunity for that. But that caveat is it's a good team. There are definitely teams out there where maybe they won't support you like you need to as a newer
Yeah.
developer or a newer
Right.
analyst. So having a good team at the front where you're not everything is relying on you, should alleviate some of the stress, especially if you've done your due diligence and made sure that the team as well as the manager you're working for are going to be there and have your back and have realistic expectations for you.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah. Um,
Yeah. So, all right. So, like you talked about your journey, and it's man,
Hmm.
it's like really your story is compelling. I hope somebody writes a movie script about it. But no, really, man, thank you so much for sharing that because like a lot of times people think they see somebody and they see that they're doing well, they probably didn't have to go through all these different things, and it's cool to hear like your story, what you had to struggle through,
Yeah.
things that you did to overcome, and like things you
Do you know
did
what I just
to
realized?
to go where you are now. What's that?
I never even told people what I do. I'm
You said a little bit of it. So
Yeah.
talk about
Okay.
your
So
current job.
I'll take I'll take 20 seconds.
Okay.
Just people who don't know who I am or up to pace. I'm I'm an analytics engineer. So I've been doing that since I got out of NSS. I'm at the second company I've worked for in that as that at that role, and it's been less than 2 years. I'm sort of a cross between a data analyst and a data engineer. Some days I'm doing back end stuff, data engineering, and some sort of Azure Data Factory or an SSIS, and finding raw data, manipulating it, bringing it into a data warehouse. Some days I'm writing code, making sure reports can get written. And some days I'm a business consultant, making sure that different departments are getting the reports they need, or helping them think of what reports they haven't thought of yet. And a lot of that, all of that, hinges on data modeling and automation, and getting the report set up in a way that we don't have to manually do this every day. You don't have to go to Excel and hit execute and then reformat and spend 2 hours trying to get your uh, trying to get your report built when we can do that in a couple of seconds from
Yeah.
something like Tableau or connected to SQL. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm an analytics engineer, and um, kind of doing a little bit of both of the analysis as well as the engineering.
So what's something that you're involved with that's like unique or interesting?
I can't say that it's unique. I'll say that it's interesting. I I do a lot of data modeling. Most of what I do, a lot of what I do, is creating data models. And what makes that interesting is doing it at a company that is sort of new in the data in their data their attempts at building their data culture. And what's interesting about it is trying to achieve buy-in, explaining
Oh
to
yeah.
people why it's important. You know, you'll
Oh
hear
yeah.
stuff, you'll get some resistance, like, well, we've been pulling from the raw data tables with no problem. Why do we need to go through the process of making a data model? And there are a lot of different answers to that. My take, you know, well, there's a bit of education, but there are two primary reasons why you'd want a data model, in my opinion. First is optimization. Stuff works better, it runs smoother, it looks cleaner. You clean up issues that you didn't see because you were looking at a bunch of mess. But the second thing, the second thing, and I think this is, I don't want to undervalue it, is it limits the opportunities for people to make mistakes. When not experienced developers or people who think, I've seen a lot of people who think SQL is really cool and they like playing with it. And they can write a query that works. They're like, wow, look what I did. I'm like, yeah,
What,
that's
like
really cool.
select
But
star?
also, yeah, but good job. But you also accidentally transform this data to a point where it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so when you build a data model, you can limit the opportunities for mistakes to be made. And people who like playing with it, you can show them how to play with it in a way that's safe, or you can limit access to certain parts of the data model and only give them access to the parts that are pre-built for their particular needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the I don't I, that's a part of it that's really important to discuss, is that because once what's I've seen it before, you get an analyst who is learning SQL that has been running solo for a while, and they've been writing and developing, and they have answers, and they really like the output that they have. And then you go and you look over their code, and you correct it, and you fix the mistakes, and you improve the efficiency, and then you show them the new output, and like, well, that's not what I have. It's like, well, there's a reason for that, and it's really hard to take it back from someone once they've already done that, especially if they have
Yeah.
a personality of, well, what I did is better because I did it, and you're proud of of what you've done.
Yeah.
So if you can make it just that much easier for people to get the right data, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So in that to that end, creating data models, I the last month or two, I've been helping our HR develop a data model off of our Paycom data, whether from mainly for labor hours, overtime, scheduling, and
Hmm.
whatnot, and helping them move, like I said, helping them move their clunky Excel reports to a pretty seamless and smooth automated process through Tableau. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I really like pushing when it comes to data, and especially lately, is action oriented data. Um,
Hmm.
the, every company has a data culture. Every single company. You don't have to try, but you have a data culture. And whether or not, if you want to have a good data culture, you want to make sure you actually have to put some work into it.
Yeah.
Um, but that's something that companies I don't think realize is if you're not putting effort into your data, you still have a data culture. It's up to your company to nurture that data culture into something
Yeah.
useful.
And
But one of the
mitigate
ways that
risks.
one of the things that I found that really helps promote the data culture in a way that's more accessible is sort of breaking through the mindset that data is just a reporting tool, that data is that all we need to do, and that the only people who need it are C-suite and senior leadership, that they're the ones who
Yeah.
are benefiting from data because we need to know how much money we made or how many people we have to fire based on labor statistics. That's one way that data is used to report on month over month, year over year reporting. But what I really care about these days, what I think makes a big impact on data culture is action oriented data. And
Mhm.
the way we've been building these HR data models, we've been able to get data. We're able to get reports into hands of like operational leaders
Yeah.
and managers to help them better schedule, to help them forecast. We have a lot of clinicians in different locations across the country, and some of them have trainings that other ones don't, and they want to make sure that they're scheduling clinicians in a pace that they're not all the trained people aren't working at the same time. They can spread it out, and if you can get data and use it as a way to improve the productivity of all levels of the organization and
Hmm.
show them the value of data, I think that goes a long way in improving your company's data culture. When
Oh
everyone
yeah.
realizes that the data is everyone's responsibility and everyone's benefiting from it, I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of
Yeah.
um, what we're trying to do.
Good deal, man. Yeah, definitely. I've been part of like Center of Excellence. I've been part of some initiatives where the company's trying to make people, like, yeah, you got to use these things, you got to do these things to get the data that you want, and all these different things. And yeah, buy-in is the hardest thing, I think. Um, well, yeah, buy-in, then adoption, right? But
Yeah,
once you get the buy-in, then you get the adoption, because then people feel
yeah,
like they have a stake in it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is my
exactly.
thing, and I'm gonna take it to the finish line too." So
Yeah,
cool,
show the
man.
value. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So last question for the night is, what's something that you're passionate about? And it doesn't even have to be work related.
Yeah.
Just what are you passionate
Well,
about?
late since getting into the data world, I'm really passionate about finding opportunities to use my data skills in my community. Whether that be, I have a really my partner and I are really passionate about local businesses, especially local restaurants. We have a small town. We have a lot of great local restaurants. We want them to do well. And we're always cheering on our local restaurants when they get busy. And so,
Mm.
if I find opportunities to support them with my data sets, my data skills, like I would jump on that. Also, just local nonprofits volunteering for in-kind donations for community projects that need that need better um, analysis. Um, personally, I have a few hobbies. I enjoy scotch and bourbon. I'm a mixologist. I like making drinks at home, and I've been getting into acting. I started taking some acting classes just because I wanted to do
Ooh,
something creative.
cool.
I wasn't planning on talking about that, but I feel like it's good to have something creative in your life, to something other than just sitting behind a computer. So I decided to give that a try. My
I
real passion. Go
I
ahead.
was, I was I had an opportunity some years ago when I lived in Nashville. I was an extra in a video. It's called Lewis's Story. It was about it was about it was a program for people who just got out of prison, go
Oh,
back to
cool.
work and stuff like that. And so I remember I was like telling my son, I was like, "Hey, watch this video, see if you can find me." And it's like way in the back, and he's like, "Were you wearing a red hat?" Yeah. And so it was like I was
Nice.
just carrying a box from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen, and it was like half the day. And it was like, cool. I've tried that. That was fun. Hey, why not? And it was like
Yeah.
actually in the same it was like in the same month that I was on a worship team at like Crosspoint, right? And we
Okay.
we
Yeah.
did
I used to do that too.
we were yeah, we were in I was like in a video or a couple videos, and it's like
That's cool.
um and then I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. That's that was the last time I'm on video, but hey, I'm on video now. Look at that." So
Yeah.
so
Well, it's
anyway,
it's
go ahead,
actually
man.
it's actually through a nonprofit, a veteran nonprofit in Nashville called, I'll plug them, called Creative Vets. They do a
Cool.
lot of art related stuff for veterans, whether they like songwriting or painting, but they also do some. Now they're doing some acting, so it's really cool to get
Creative
involved.
Vets. That's cool. I
Creative
gotta
Vets,
write
yeah,
that
they
down.
have Nashville's their base station, but they have a few other locations now. But
Yeah.
um, the thing that I'm personally most passionate about when I actually get talking about something and I can't quite stop myself, it's talking about advocating and mentoring for younger veterans, or more
Yeah.
recently transition veterans.
Yep.
I love talking to them, helping them understand, like after you get past the VA stuff and education benefits and disability ratings, when you get those gears turning, um, there's more to the transition, and I feel like a lot of veterans, they only get halfway in their transition.
Yeah, it's
And
tough, man.
and my
What was the hardest part for your like transitioning from the military?
um well, that to me, I think it was the communication aspect.
Oh
And what I like to talk to veterans about is that you have to learn to acclimate to the language of your new surroundings.
yeah.
And it would be nice to expect civilians or who have never served to learn our lingo in our culture, but it's
Uh,
just not realistic. It's
no.
not realistic to expect that, and it takes finding yourself beyond the uniform
Yeah.
to fully transition, and that's hard for a lot of
Yeah.
veterans.
Oh
Actually,
yeah.
guys like you who spent 20 years.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working.
Institutionalized.
Yeah, when I was working for Tribeca and I was doing all the veteran stuff, I had a one-on-one with a three-star general who was the head of a veteran office
What?
at a large university. And I remember
Yeah.
having a one-on-one conversation with him, and I said that to him, and I pulled a nerve. And I remember him getting very upset, and I realized that, like, you spend 35 years, like, what do you mean find myself outside the military? I am the military. For me,
Oh
going
man.
after only being in for 4 years, I can imagine Tito for 20. It could be a lot
Yeah.
harder.
Oh yeah.
It's like, this is who I am. What do you mean,
Yeah.
find myself outside the uniform?
Oh yeah.
But you're
Definitely.
sort of you're sort of otherwise, though, if you don't, you're sort of caught between two worlds, not fully belonging to one or the other. Of course, this is in our minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't actually the case, but it's our perception, and that perception is what makes it so hard to connect with the new world around us. So I like to help veterans not forsake their careers in the military or forsake what they've done, but um, you don't want to become the high school jock who won't put away the leather jacket, the men's jacket, and all he ever does is
Yeah.
talk about the glory days. You want to
Yeah.
hear those stories from time to time. I'll tell my stories. I have some fun stories, but if
Yeah.
if it's all I talk about, I just alienate myself from my new surroundings.
Yep.
And so you got to
Yeah.
find a way to find yourself outside the uniform, learn to communicate, and I'll circle back to being comfortable with who you are, which is
Yeah.
who am I right now, not who was I 5 years ago, 6 years
Yeah,
ago,
I would
8 years
I
ago.
would say that yeah, it's definitely that's definitely important, especially if you are, of advanced age, right? And then you're starting entry level. And so like my
Yeah,
first job, I was 41 the day that I started. I was
yeah,
41 years old and my peers were in their early, maybe mid 20s, right? And
yeah,
so I'm like, I got kids your age, right? And so then I had to change like my mentality about like communicating and like
yeah,
what am I going to talk about with these people that I work with that you know they're like half my age. It's like, oh
yeah.
my gosh,
Because
and
that
so
feeling can become arrogance really quickly if you're not
oh
careful.
yeah, oh yeah, and
That that is felt by the people around you, whether you realize it or
oh
not.
yeah,
And
yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and then I'm like looking at my director, my AVP, and they're all like around my age, a little bit younger, and I was like, this is crazy. But then I'm like freaking out because like I used to put my like the clothes that I would wear, I would do like, okay, here's an outfit, this is gonna be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and that was in my hanging in my closet, right? After wearing the same thing, basically, it's not the same exact uniform, but my uniforms, I could switch my tops and my bottoms, and I would still be wearing the same thing. But I'm like, I put them all in the closet, and then um, some I don't know. My wife decided she was gonna go. Oh, I'm gonna go do this or do that, whatever. And I look in the closet. Oh, it was like midweek, and I had worn two outfits and then I look in the closet and my outfits are all jumbled up and I don't couldn't remember what I wore on Monday, couldn't remember what I wore on Tuesday, and I
right,
started to freak out because I'm like, I don't want to go into work and people go, "Oh, you wore that yesterday. Did you sleep in your car?" Stuff like that, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And so I was like freaking out, and it's like that's just such a minute thing, right? But it's like it was like a real fear because I never had
yeah,
to worry about what I had to wear that day other than my last few years in the Air Force. And unless you were working on the flight line, you had to wear blues, any kind of blues. So I wore blues every Monday for probably 2 years, 3 years, whatever it was. But other than that, it was always BDUs or ABUs, the woodland camouflage in the beginning,
yeah, yeah.
and then the Air Force, we had our own, air battle uniform, whatever it was. I didn't go to
I'm
battle. I
familiar.
carried a
Yeah,
toolbox.
most of the
But
bases I was at in Iraq, we were connected to an air base, and the
yeah,
Air Force usually had the security. Um, so I've been
yeah,
around a lot of airmen in my military career.
yeah. Listen, man, it's been great talking to you. I know like our counter says like it's only at 58 minutes, but it's because I couldn't figure out how to go live on the stream
Yeah,
for
we
like
cut
2 minutes.
ourselves
I'm
a
like,
minute and a half
what is
short. Yeah,
happening? Yeah. So I
I think
just
we did
yeah, I
pretty
want to
good.
be
We were pretty much
yeah,
on time for all three questions, and
yeah, man. So I appreciate your time, man, and the time that you put into like the things that you brought up, and how thoughtful they were. And I feel
yep,
like they'll be helpful to people because I mean, one of the main things about this is just getting people's stories out there so
yeah,
people who are thinking about a career change or who are moving from the military to civilian are going to be able to get some kind of encouragement
yeah,
because it's not
and
all like sunshine and roses, but there are ways to overcome these obstacles that we've all been through. So
yeah, and feel free to reach out to find me on LinkedIn if you're curious. I won't. I like talking to people. I won't be bothered if you have questions you want answered, or you just want to say, "Wow, that was cool." You know, I'm happy to hear it, and
yeah,
if I can help, I will. If I can't, I'll try and find someone who can. So,
absolutely. Me too. All right, everybody. Next week we're going to be having a Air Force buddy of mine. We met actually on a deployment in one of the hottest places I've ever been in my life, not Kuwait, but Qatar. So he's an
I've stepped down
engineer.
in Qatar. Yeah.
Yeah, you were the deed.
Well, on when my leave, we touched down in Qatar to
Oh,
fuel,
you go to
and then
Doha
I
to
got
go shopping.
I didn't get to leave the plane. We
Oh,
didn't get to leave. We
yeah, I
got
had
off in the
one of
middle of the
those.
night, we set that into the runway, and then we had to get back on
Yeah.
and leave. So
Yeah, I tell people all
anyway,
the time.
sorry.
Yeah, I've been to Hungary, but I was in Hungary on an aircraft on the tarmac for 3 hours. That
You were
was my
introducing an
experience.
SKS, and I was being rude about it. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, let me kick you out of the stream. I'm just joking. So
Yeah.
yeah, Brian Herr is going to be on here. He's an engineer out of Kansas. And so, hey, I'd love to see you there. So tune in, same bat time, same bat channel next Monday. Peace.